podcast. This podcast is all about equipping, encouraging, and inspiring youth pastors weekly with topics that are brought to the table by youth pastors from all over the world. And now, here's your host for this week, Melissa Stevenson.
Good morning, y'all. Welcome to the podcast. This is Student Ministry Conversations. I'm Melissa, and this is my friend Stina. I'll get to her introduction here in a second. So we hope that you learn and equip yourself by listening and hanging out with us to be a better youth worker in wherever you serve a church. We're going to be talking today a little bit about big ideas and implementation. That's a big word, y'all. Big word. So my friend Stina, we actually live in the same town, but we don't see each other all year. But we go to the same camp, 3.5 hours away. But I do have lunch with your pastor once a month. And so this is how that conversation started happening, because he is a very out to there kind of guy. And you're not a quiet little mouse. So we were talking about how do y'all work together best? And we started talking about big ideas. So you remember, this was 2 weeks ago. So do you remember what we were talking about?
Yes. Yeah. Just how he comes up with like a lot of really big ideas, and then it's kind of like, okay, but who's going to do it?
That makes sense, right? Because you both are busy, right? And so how do we implement that? Do you think that has something to do with the big idea portion? Do you think that has something to do with your personality traits and how that works together?
I think so. We both have a tendency of having just like a lot of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're both kind of like, I guess the nicer word would be extravagant. Like we're extra.
That makes sense.
We're extra. And so we don't really tend to think of like small ideas when it comes to things. We're like, oh yeah, we could do this like massive project. And we're like, but can we?
Right.
Can we actually?
Well, and there's also, we can't do it by ourselves, right? We can't do gigantic things, especially in church settings, by ourselves. And so I have that where I have the big ideas. In fact, my last church, they actually made it a rule that I had to take big ideas to the choir director first, who is my best friend, to calm me down. Like, let's contain this a little bit before we start making plans here. So I don't have anybody over here like that now, so I just keep going big. Okay, so in order to make this happen, what we were talking about was delegating, and that y'all figure out. Well, tell us about that. How do y'all figure out that?
So really, it kind of goes, it's me. When we were first working together, he was actually the worship pastor at another church, and I was working underneath him, helping him do like all these things. And when he was starting his new church, I kind of became what we jokingly called the somebody.
I like that term.
And so it was like, oh, well, we need somebody to do this, and we need somebody to do that. And then everyone would just look at me and be like, oh, it's you. And I got to the point where I was like, no, it's not.
Boundaries.
Yeah. It's like I have other jobs and I have other things that I am also a part of. So I just couldn't be the somebody all of the time. And I knew that his personality and my personality are really great at coming up with the ideas, but we're not necessarily the follow through, get it completed type of people. It's like we can start off great. We know how to start off a project. We know the ideas. We know the things that it's needing. But then when it comes to like, we jokingly call it the boring stuff.
That makes sense, yes.
Yeah. Just the stuff that didn't interest us. But it's the stuff that you need to keep doing to have the project actually be completed. So I realized, I realized I can't do it all. because we just had a lot of projects happening all at once at one point, and I was like, I am one person.
Right?
And then realizing that like we had other people who I knew were talented in like crafts and, you know, like were artistic type of people. I knew that some of the people that were in our congregation were really good at like just getting something done.
Hmm.
Like they needed someone to kind of give them the idea.
Uh-huh.
Like if someone gave them the idea, they would do it. And so I would come to him and be like, "Great, I love the idea. But maybe we should talk to some people first to see if we have enough people
Hmm.
to do the project." And I remember him looking at me one time and going, "That's a good idea."
So now it's become
Like,
your routine, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So you
yeah,
have the big idea, and I remember you said one specific phrase that if we look at the people and go, they already have too much on their plates, then
hmm,
this has to wait, or maybe it's not
right,
something we can do.
right.
So it's
Which also goes back to like when we had all these projects and I was the only one. And I
right.
was like, let's pick the thing that we know is the most important
Hmm.
to do. And I think sometimes, like when you are doing ministry, you can really get into the mindset of, oh, well, we have to do all of these things because we want to reach as many people as possible and we want to do as much as possible to bring as many people as possible in. When really, in reality, Jesus did simple things,
Hmm.
you know, like he talked.
Yeah.
He didn't have big flashy lights. He
Right.
didn't have like puppets or, you know, like he just talked to people. He loved on them. He spent time with them. And I think we need to remember that, like, whereas doing a lot of things, you know, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if it's something that like God hasn't asked you to do,
Hmm.
then maybe step back and look at it and, you know, kind of reevaluate, is this something that's just going to make us busy and not actually able to build those relationships with people,
Hmm.
you know? Or is this something that could actually be beneficial to the people in our congregation, to the people out in the city,
Right.
you know? So, like, just really programs and stuff like that are great, but they're only great if they're what God's asked you to do.
Yes, I do love that that little nugget of phrase that says that Jesus did not have curriculum. Like
Yeah,
there was no book, there was no like lesson
right.
plan. So I yeah, but he just got out there and talked to people. Okay, so
Yeah.
how did y'all identify the people in your congregation that had those skills or liked doing those things? How did you go about doing that?
Well, firstly, I would say we had relationship with the people.
Hmm.
So like it wasn't just a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night or during a program kind of relationship with the people.
Hmm.
It was like one of the ladies that like actually did a lot for like our children's ministry. Um she would invite ladies over to come and crochet.
That's so fun.
Like come over and do crochet. And like while we were at her house and just living life together like that, like I saw all of the other things that she was doing that was that way. And like just realizing like she's someone who's like really good with her hands and would do really well. Like she was already helping in our children's ministry because she loved
Hmm.
kids, but she really only did Sunday morning. And so then when we had like Easter production type things or, you know, VBS type of stuff, and we needed things made,
Yes.
she was like the first one that came to my mind because like I had seen some of the stuff that she had made at her house.
Hmm.
And so I think when you have built relationships with the people in your ministry, you're able to really see more so of what they are
Hmm.
just naturally gifted at doing that maybe they don't talk about or show off,
Yeah.
you know? Because I think a lot of people, even though they're good at something, don't necessarily brag about it.
Hmm. That's usually the ones we want,
So,
right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of have to be more observant
Hmm.
of just what they do naturally when you're in their life. I would also say, I mean, honestly, observance
Well, that's what I was
is
gonna
like
say.
the biggest.
Do you think that is, and just devil's advocate kind of situation here? Do you think that that
Mhm.
is a better way to figure these things out rather than like a Google form or like a form you give them at church and go, we do this in PTO where we go, these are the things I'm interested in, blah 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 blah. But I kind of like what you're saying about observation instead because it's
Mhm.
more organic, but it's also more authentic, I think.
Right.
Hmm.
I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with having like a form for people to do, especially if your ministry is like a little bit more on the bigger side
Hmm.
and you have new people coming in, like just to kind of, I know at one of the churches that like my parents went to a while ago, which I've thought about, they actually had it to where people who were becoming new members, they were to check off 2 ministries that they were interested in helping.
Uh-huh.
And then they went and helped with that ministry as like the beginning of their like becoming a member, just to see what it was actually like.
Right.
Um so, and some people would stay and some people would not. They would find a different ministry, but um I think having, for I would say for like new people
Hmm.
who are maybe are interested in getting involved, to know what the ministries are
That makes
or
sense.
the area,
Uh-huh.
you know, is great. But if you're looking at your congregation or like your ministry pool,
Right.
essentially, um, seeing who's actually out there, because maybe you haven't had new people come in a while, but you're needing
Hmm.
help for a new project, to just kind of look out at what's available to you and go, I know that you're good at this, and I know that you're good at this. And then to just simply ask,
Hmm.
you know, and say, I really remember you being really good at this. Would you mind helping
Get them in there with
with
that
this project?
compliment first. Okay.
Right.
Sneaky compliment ninja. Okay. So how do you get them on board with the vision of what you're doing? One of the phrases that someone said to me when I was asking them to help with something is they said, "What do you envision?" And so, in other words, what was already going on in my little brain that he could help with? And my goodness, was that a turning point for me? That
Mm-hmm.
I could, because I had that thing, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But I had that thing where I have the thing in my head, and then you're not doing it the way I have it in my head. But I didn't tell you what was in my head. So how are you going to? So
Right.
it's a big back and forth. So when he said that, what do you envision? Ooh, I was just, oh, okay, this is what I already have. And he goes, I said, other than that, I don't really care. Like you do you. And then he
Mm-hmm.
took with it. So how do you get on board with the vision of what you've already got in the big idea of Michael's head?
Yeah. Um, I think something that, not to like, it's a little harder. So like Michael, to express this correctly and not sound a certain kind of way, but Michael and I are definitely more of the, because we are the idea people,
Hmm.
like we already know kind of like what we're wanting and how we're kind of wanting to play it out, but we also like, because we are also the creative type of people, we also know that if we get people involved, um we have to leave space for them to be able to do it the way that God's asking them to do it.
Love that phrase.
So yeah, but we're really good at like explaining or showing
Hmm.
what we're wanting. So like for Michael, sometimes he'll do like a slideshow or he'll draw it out. He's like, I'm thinking I want this over here and I want this over there, kind of thing. We both have learned that when it is a project that we are wanting more of our people to kind of run more with. We give more of a like general idea
Mm-hmm.
and then give them like, we want your thoughts
Mm-hmm.
on like how would you do this part of the project? How would you implement
Right.
this? Like, these are our goals. Like, so like tell them what the goals are
Mm-hmm.
and then let them kind of give their input. Because if we're just micromanaging, no one likes that.
That would be my next question. But okay, talking about that same thing when we let people have space, I love that one. But especially when it's something that I don't have the expertise in. If I really
Mhm.
want that brick wall over there painted, because I really want that brick wall painted, um, I don't necessarily have the best expertise for painting a
Right.
cinder brick wall outside, and other people have done that in the past. So I like that we're allowing not only the space but the expertise, and
Yeah.
I don't need to tell them how to do that because I don't know how to do
Hmm.
that. So that makes sense. And so when we're talking about that, we're also talking about making people feel included, right?
Hmm.
Where we can all oh, I had this written down because and I put it in our notes. Combating follow through failure. I'm going to like trademark that phrase because I have that problem too. And
Yeah.
I estimate a lot in youth ministry probably do because there's a lot
Hmm.
of us that have high energy. It seems to kind of go with the job title. And so I do like that when we're delegating, we're combating that follow through failure because
Hmm.
we're getting other people not only involved, but we're getting people to check in on us because,
Right. The accountability.
yes, that's the word, accountability.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so when you're doing that buy-in, let's go back to that. Do you get people on board, or does that have to come from, and I even put in quotes, senior pastor, because for me, Michael being a senior pastor is hysterical. So, but does it have to come from the senior pastor for the buy-in to happen?
I don't think so.
Hmm.
I know for some people, um, the whoever's essentially like going to be the main head over the project, because like Michael's not always like he and I and other people will come up with the ideas, but he'll then like look at whoever it is that it's going to be more affecting,
Hmm.
like whether it's children's ministry, youth ministry, outreach ministry, whoever. He'll look at that person and be like, all right, now run with it.
Yes.
And so that person, I think, being more, since they're going to be more of the go-to person,
Hmm.
if they're the ones to initially ask, um, people are like, will do it. I know that there are sometimes more people, not more people. I know that there are times where there are people who are more likely to do it
Hmm.
if the head pastor does ask. Um, but I think that that should really be more of a last resort
Hmm.
kind of thing. I think paying attention to when someone says no is also
Oh,
important,
yes.
and not then going to the head pastor and be like, well, but this person told me no, maybe they'll tell you yes.
Hmm.
Because then to me, that's just manipulation.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So if you are trying to get someone and they're not just responding to you, like that's like they haven't told you no, they haven't told you yes, they're just not responsive, then maybe going to like whoever is next
Uh-huh.
up the totem pole kind of thing, like
That's kind of
to
like a
see if
ladder.
they'll answer, right,
Hmm.
to see if they'll at least just answer from that person.
Hmm.
um but yeah, no, usually for us anyways, those of us who are doing the project, or we have a girl who is now, I jokingly say I now gave her the somebody title because she's Michael's secretary, assistant person at the church now.
Hmm.
Um, she's also super artsy. Like she makes her own clothes and like does all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But if she's doing a project for the project, like she's putting something together, she'll come to me and ask for like my advice and my help to do it, or she'll ask other people who she also knows are the creative type. So I think to the people who are helping you, if you give them the freedom as well to be like, hey, if you can't do it by yourself, like let me know, or if you know people who can help you, pull them in.
Yeah. Well,
Just ask
I like
for help.
I like that idea of the giving others authority to do that. Like there is
Mhm.
something confident building about doing that with your
Yeah.
staff. So I like that. Okay, so let's go back to that letting go of control part. So how do we let go of the thing of the project and let people do it the way they want to do it? And then there's a follow-up question along with that.
So with my other job, how we actually
We
get
actually
to
know each
meet
other.
one
Yeah.
another. I learned, so I am over a youth ministry where we have like a bunch of volunteers that will come in, and I knew that like I couldn't do it all myself, and realized that for quite a few of the people, when I did give them just here's what I want, do however, like I need someone to do games, can you figure out games? And then just watching the person one time, because I wasn't feeling well. This was like a big thing for me. I wasn't feeling well, and I was like, just do the game. I don't care what game you do, just do a game.
Uh-huh.
And they were amazing at it. And I remember thinking, okay, I don't need to do it if someone else is good at it. And being able to like release it that way. But then we also have small group times, and I'll do the main talking part, and then I'll give it to the small group leaders. I learned that it's a little easier to kind of give that area over
Mm-hmm.
to them if I've given them a bit of a format of what I would kind of like
That makes sense.
to happen, So it's not, I'm not just telling them like talk about whatever you want. Like no, like this is what we're talking about, and I would like for you guys to just, you don't have to hit all of the questions that I put in there.
Mm-hmm.
If a discussion like goes off and you guys are able to just like, it's still on topic, but you don't ever hit like the last two questions, I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
But like realizing that God has gifted all of us with special things that we are able and capable of doing. And if I'm the one then that's like forcing my idea
Uh-huh.
onto you in that moment and micromanaging you kind of way, then God doesn't get to flow the way that he intended to. I'm the one then that's kind of like telling God no.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't like that.
No. Good kid. My kid.
So I think, right. So I think realizing that if God has really coming to the point of realizing that if God has put people in your ministry to help you, then let them help you,
Mm-hmm.
and understand that God is ultimately in control, number one.
Right.
Number two, if you know that you heard God tell you, no, this person needs to help in this area, and they're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
that you ultimately aren't actually in control anyways, God is.
And that's true. Okay, what happens when that plan or that person that volunteers goes totally off script or just out in here in left field where you're like, wait, come back this way. So
Yeah.
do you let go of that control still, or do you let it go, or do you bring them back? Like,
I think it depends on how they're going off into left field. So like obviously in youth ministry things don't always go
true.
how you plan. And with our kids at this ministry here where I'm currently at, my building, the topic can very quickly take a different turn,
Mm-hmm.
but it needs to be a turn that's taken. And so I am during like small group times with mine, I actually just walk around the whole room. We have 4 different small groups that are happening, and my main reason for just being like the outsider of the small group time, just walking around, listening and
Mm-hmm.
paying attention to how the group is going, is just in case like a youth needs to be pulled out
Right.
of the group, whether it's they're just being disrespectful, they're getting a little too rowdy, or just something seems off with them
We need to
in
have a
general.
different conversation. Yeah.
Right. But there are times where I'll hear that the conversation has like kind of taken like a little bit of a different turn, and I'll just kind of hang out in that group a little bit,
Uh-huh.
just closer to it, listening, and then I will pick up on, just because of like knowing the youth a little bit more and knowing the volunteers a little bit more, like paying attention to, okay, is this an okay way for this to go
Uh-huh.
right now, right? Like if it's veering off left, like is that an okay veer? Like do we need to take an exit
Mm-hmm.
off of the path that we're on right now? And paying attention to how my leaders are actually handling the situation.
Mm-hmm.
If it's fine and it's a topic that I think is totally okay for them to like be talking about and covering, then I will just let it go. But if it's not, then I will usually interject and be like, hey, what's the next question? Have you guys gotten to the next question?
Move along.
Just to
Move
kind of like
along. Yeah.
help pull them back. I won't ask the next question. I
Mm-hmm.
won't, or I'll say, hey, what question are you guys on? And then I'll answer the question
Mm-hmm.
to kind of get the focus back.
That makes
Because
sense.
I know sometimes for those who are helping, they don't necessarily know how
Uh-huh.
to get it back. And that's why it's just going off the rails a little
Right.
bit. They're like, I've lost control. I don't know how to bring it back. And so I think paying attention
Mm-hmm.
to what is actually happening is what's happening. Maybe like God saying, okay, yeah, we need to talk about this. Like
Yeah.
this actually opened a doorway for this to now happen. Or is it something that you can kind of help redirect and correct back for them? Because sometimes our volunteers have bad days.
Uh-huh. That's true. Yeah.
And sometimes our volunteers are, which we have a lot of college kids, and sometimes their brains are just fried from
And sometimes,
all
yeah,
of the
they're
learning.
tired. They're just tired.
Right.
Right. I had a piano teacher. I would do
So,
that too. I would just talk and talk and talk and talk. I didn't have to play a single note. For 30 minutes, I would just talk. And my sister would go in and she's like, I had to play the whole time. How'd you do that? I'm talk and talk and talk. Didn't play the piano at
yeah.
all. Yeah. Okay.
So I think paying attention to like what is actually going on,
Mm-hmm.
and then, I mean, if you are the leader, to know when to step in, how to gently correct in the moment if
Yeah.
that's what's needed,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then wait till after. Because there was one time where I was corrected. I wasn't even really corrected. I was yelled at.
Ooh.
I didn't really do anything wrong. I was yelled at in front of other volunteers and in front of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And like that isn't how we should do
No, that
correction.
makes you want to not come back.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think whether it's something that needs to be corrected, or just helped
Mm-hmm.
in like bringing back, paying attention to that, saying the correction if it needs to be said, but saying it calmly and nicely and not,
Right.
meanly.
Yeah.
And then just talking to the person
Mm-hmm.
afterwards to just be like, hey, are you okay? When we were talking about this, and just bringing it up.
Mm-hmm.
We here at this ministry at House of Faith, um,
Plug.
yeah, we well, at least for the youth ministry, I will, after all of the kids have left, I meet with all of my volunteers and I will ask them,
Mm-hmm.
hey, anything I need to know about? Was there a situation with any of the youth that maybe I didn't see? Because I'm not everywhere.
Right. Right.
I am only one person.
Yeah.
And so seeing if maybe something was said that I didn't hear or done that I didn't see, talked about that I was not aware of, and just kind of hitting base with them that way. And then asking them as well, like, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I will ask all of them, like, so how's life? how is school, how is family, how is your health? I know like we've had a couple that have like had some health issues, and so like again, doing life with them and it
Mhm.
not just being solely about the ministry, because if your focus is only ministry and not on the people that are
Yeah.
helping you, they're not going to want to hang around then either, because
Mhm.
then they're just going to think that you're just using them.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and
So,
I can see how all of those things would also work not only in that smaller concept, but also in a bigger project concept. That if the
mhm,
thing that they're going for is great, let's go that way. If it needs to be
mhm.
slightly redirected, that all of the things you're
Right.
talking about, being gentle and checking in with them, and especially with those
Mhm.
volunteers. So that gets on to me about getting credit where credit is due. Because sometimes when it's the
Mhm.
big idea, it can seem like the credit goes back to the big idea people and not the people that
Right.
did the work. So how do you make that balance?
I think one, consistently thanking the people that are helping you.
Hmm.
Like just letting them know how grateful you are for that. And then if someone compliments you on how the project went, how the project looks,
Hmm.
how, like to verbally say, oh, like we had such a great team, so and so did this, so and so did that. We couldn't have done it without this person. Like for like just honestly telling people who did what,
Hmm.
and like verbalizing your gratitude to the person while they're doing it. Like if they're creating something in front of you, just be like, wow, like I could not do that.
Hmm. Yes.
There's definitely a lot of times where I'm just like, I have no idea how you created this, but I am thankful that it was you and not me,
Right.
because it would not look this good.
I have learned and this is, I swear this has been the last like 15 years kind of thing, and that seems to go along with how long I've been in ministry. But that compliments go a long way. Like
They
just
do.
telling a person exactly how impressed you are with something, that
Mhm.
man, that makes them feel really good, and that's good to do
Yeah.
for other people. I was
Hmm.
at an event yesterday for another organization, and Girl Scouts, and I was doing a recruitment event, and one of our former Girl Scouts, she just graduated, and she was taking a college class at the junior college where
Hmm.
we were having this event. And so she was walking up, and then she started talking to moms and girls about Girl Scouts and kind of recruiting at the same time. And so as soon as we got done, I texted her mom, and I was like, "Hey, thanks for letting me unintentionally borrow your kid." And that she is so good
Yeah.
at that. Like she's so well spoken, and you could tell that that just like made her mom's day, kind of thing. Like she was
Hmm.
not expecting that,
Yeah.
and there absolutely I didn't have to do that because she didn't even know that I had her kid with
Right.
me, kind of thing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
giving those unexpected compliments, especially when people are helping you, oh,
Hmm.
it's so good, and it makes me feel good. It makes them feel good. Everybody feels good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say too, especially noticing when one of your volunteers has had to deal with a difficult situation,
Yes.
like to call out and say, I know that today was hard, or I
Hmm.
know that this was like not what you were expecting to happen, but recognizing the fact that they still didn't give up,
Hmm.
and like calling that out, and then also just like acknowledging that what they're going through is not an easy thing, and then still saying, but hey, you stuck it out, like you hunt, like
Right.
good job.
Yeah. And a hug.
Like,
Sometimes just
thank
a hug.
you. Yes, yeah. And then like sometimes like here at House of Faith we'll do random treats, just find out things that they like,
Hmm.
you know. It doesn't happen like it doesn't even happen like once a month, but just having little pieces of candy
Hmm.
or baked good type of, like, that doesn't even have to be food. It can,
Yeah.
like like if it's a big project and someone has done a lot, to just be like, here's a $5, gift card to Sonic for a drink. Like, thank you.
Yes, I know. I do love the Sonic drinks. We have one
Mhm.
volunteer that she is there every week. Like she doesn't do a lot of the heavy lifting, but she is a
Mhm.
person when I need a person, like a second
Yeah.
adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she listens to all the kids. And so we had a birthday party for her birthday, because she's a twin.
Oh,
So
yeah.
she doesn't get her birthday by herself quite often. And so we had a only celebrating her birthday party, and with
Nice.
flowers and cake. And oh, shoot, that was a good day for all of us. But that
Yeah.
was a good volunteer experience. Okay, so what do you think about getting youth involved in the process of doing these big projects, and how can they how can they put their 2 cents in there? Because we talked about this future leader concept when they're really the
Mhm.
now leaders that we need them to be. So how do we gather them in?
I would honestly, I love having youth help with things. They're probably the ones that I find the easiest to delegate things to sometimes.
That's true. That's true.
I'm like, hey, go do this.
Yeah,
Go help that. Pick up those chairs. Thank you.
right.
Um, just because they're there,
That's true.
usually just standing around, not really doing much, and sometimes bored if like their parents are talking.
Hmm.
It's like, hey, do you mind helping with this?
I mean,
Thanks.
you're here
Um,
anyway.
right. But I would say like honestly, the same as like with any other volunteer. Pay attention to what they're good at.
Hmm.
Call them out and say, I really appreciate when they just, cuz sometimes youth will do things organically in leadership style,
Hmm.
where it's like you have that one in the group that's like, "Hey guys, come on, no, let's come over here now. It's time for this." Like they're calling us in, type of person. Like there's someone like that in most
I'm
groups where
I'm
they're like, "Hey
waiting for
guys, be
mine, but
quiet."
okay.
They're there. I just sometimes I will say this, sometimes here at House of Faith, the ones that become that
Hmm.
person for us are have sometimes been the ones that are the more vocal one that we've had to be like, "Hey, can you just not like right now, I just need you to like."
I have seen that. My troublemakers sometimes turn out to be my leaders later. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So I think just recognizing like, all right, so this one talks. They're good at talking.
Uh-huh.
So we started doing in our small group time, because I print off the questions,
Hmm.
and I'll print off like where to find the scripture, and we started adding just a prayer for them to read at the bottom to like wrap up
Hmm.
small group time. Um, and we started, I want to say, at the beginning of last school year, we started doing it to where I would tell the leaders, if you know of someone that's in your group
Hmm.
that is the talker, give them the paper.
Uh-huh.
Have them be the one that asks the question,
Love that.
because they're going to want people to answer them,
And they're gonna
to
want to they're
respond.
going well, and they're gonna want the attention on them for that 2 seconds. That's why they talk.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, help use what they're good at
Hmm.
in a good way. Like, in the moment, it doesn't seem like it's a good thing.
Hmm.
But when you have that person that's a little bit more headstrong, if you get them on your side,
Right.
they'll be headstrong for you.
Uh-huh.
So if you get them headstrong for Jesus, they're going to want,
Hmm.
the group to pay attention to the scripture reading. They're going to want the group to like stay on topic. And then sometimes we have the quiet ones that will surprise you,
Hmm.
and you just kind of notice how they are super attentive. And if you just give them, again, the paper to like just read from, like you don't have to think of what you have to say.
Hmm.
Here it is. Because if you don't have the talkative one in the group, give it to the one that seems a little bit more like they're paying attention. They're not just like
Looking at the
and quiet,
ceiling, right? Yeah.
but they're actually like looking at you, taking in what you're saying. Give them
Hmm.
the paper to read from. If it's someone who's doodling on themselves like during the lesson time or whatever, and you have an art project thing coming up or something that's
Hmm.
needing to be designed, like help pull them in to
Yeah.
help you with that.
Yeah.
you know I wouldn't necessarily give them as much freedom
Hmm.
as like the normal volunteers, but if you can pair them with someone that you think could help,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
them, and be like, hey, I have a creative kid, I have a creative volunteer, let's pair them together,
Mm-hmm.
and let the creative person be like, hey, help me do, what do you think we should do for this? I have these two colors and I can't decide which one I want. Which
Right.
one do you like?
Yeah, I like that
You know?
because it's giving them that buy-in, but also giving them control
Right.
of the choice. Um,
Right.
I really like when we pair youth and adults, especially that have expertise in things. We went on a mission one time, and they were having us build a butterfly garden walkway. So
Hmm.
great. I don't know how to do that, but okay. And so they had another volunteer from a group from Whitewater, Wisconsin, and he was an engineer for John Deere Green, like he
Okay.
builds tractors. And he sat down with our kids and he's like, here's how we measure this, and here's how we cut this, and this is how these two joints go together. And he talked them through everything, and he was so patient. And I just sat back and watched to make sure everything was still on the up and up and everything. But like, he was great, and they both got that experience that he got to teach something that he's known for who knows how many
Right.
years, and then they got to learn something that was unexpected. That's not what they thought they were going to be doing on a mission trip. And so I love when we make those connections. Oh, it was so good. Okay, so we're getting to how, like we were talking about, where God wants us to go, but also that delegating is biblical, right? We've got Jesus delegating to his disciples, go out
Right.
and make. And so we see this in the Bible. So we should be doing it in the church. But here's my question, and this is a hinky question. So the work of the church, and that you're in a weird position because you're a volunteer at one church, but you're paid at another. So the
Yeah.
work of the church, should that be for those of us that are paid slash on staff? Or do we, in other words, do we work for the congregation or do we work for God? What is your opinion on this question?
Well, I think biblically, in whatever we do, should be work for God,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's ministry or not. And I think,
It's a big question. I know. Sorry.
yeah, well, it's one of those where, so I originally, I've been back and forth. I've done long mission trips, short mission trips, have helped with different ministries, have had actual job, like not in ministry
Uh-huh.
job. Um, like I've worked at a banjo factory, I've worked at a university bookstore. Yeah.
We need to talk about this banjo factory sometime other than now.
Uh,
I have questions.
so I've worked at like a daycare, like there's just different things that I've done. But at the same time have also during those times volunteered um for churches and ministries. And when I actually started working at House of Faith, I was not intending on getting paid. I had actually quit my job,
Mm-hmm.
so, and was going to help Michael with his church and help House of Faith, and however I was going to be provided for was how I was going to be provided for. And I wasn't thinking about getting paid by any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that God always supplies. And the people that I was going to be helping decided, no, you need to be paid for all that you're going to be doing. But I think when you are in ministry, you are doing it for God. That's who you're ultimately doing it for.
Mm-hmm.
But you are also doing it for his people.
Ooh, yes.
So me being here, like, so like it's like Paul says, he's like, if I die, cool, I'm in heaven with Jesus. But if I'm alive, then I get to tell you guys
Mm-hmm.
what he's saying. And so me being here is for God, but me being here is also for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we weren't here, if like as soon as you accepted Christ, you went to heaven, there would be no one to talk
Yeah.
about him.
To tell other people, right?
Right. And so your ultimate purpose is for the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
but his purpose for you is to be there for other people.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So because sometimes it's, well, we were talking about this earlier about the projects, whether it's what God wants us to do or what we want to do. And sometimes
Right.
those projects can seem not meaningless, but maybe not as meaningful as that we only need to be going telling people about Jesus. That my wall
Uh-huh.
really doesn't need to be painted, but by it being painted, it's going to keep my building standing longer. So then we
Yeah.
can do more
Yeah.
ministry. And so
Right.
I think you're right, like on both of those things. That makes a
Hmm.
lot of sense. Okay. Well, that was my list of questions. We've talked for so long today. It's been so good. So, do you have final thoughts of any project kind of things, of delegating, or how do we get people involved? All those kinds of ideas.
I mean, I would just go back to the things that we've been talking about. Pay attention to the people that are around you.
Mm-hmm.
Be observant. Be consistent in how you are with your volunteers would probably be
Ooh, that's
my
good.
other.
Mm-hmm.
And with youth, because that's a major thing with them. A lot of our youth don't have consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Like your yes be yes and your no be no. Like, don't. We have, for us, we have a 3 strikes kind of situation where it's like, all right, we gave you chances, and now, like, they don't like it, but at the same time, like, so my boss here, Denise, um, jokingly has said that she's like, I thought I was the mean one,
Oh
because like
no.
she and I have the tendency of being the ones that have to be like, all right, sorry, like, you have to go home,
Mm-hmm.
like, kind of thing, just because they're either way, like, they just can't keep their hands to themselves, they're just being destructive, they're can't control their mouth whatsoever, and so it's just a distraction to everybody else. And so, but she has jokingly said she thought that she was the mean one, but I'm meaner.
Uh-huh.
She's like, you're not actually mean. And I was like, I know I'm not. I, it's just, if I
Stern.
said no, it means no,
Yeah, you're
you
stern.
know? Right. And I will follow through. And
Mm-hmm.
if I gave you a warning and I told you that this is what's going to happen because of it, then that's what's going to happen because of
Yeah.
it. And I will not back down from that. But at the same time, because I have that reputation, they also know that if I say I love them, then I mean it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
You know, if I'm telling them something about the Bible, if I am someone who is consistent, I am someone who has shown that I am trustworthy and that I mean what I say,
Mm-hmm.
then that goes for everything.
Yeah.
So, like, yes, it's hard sometimes to do the discipline action,
Mm-hmm.
volunteer wise, youth wise, it doesn't matter. Like, whoever it is that you have to do it with.
Right.
Um, to be that, like, no, this is what, this is our standard, this is what we have agreed upon, this is what this is supposed to look like, and you're not doing what, like, God has shown us this needs to look like,
Mm-hmm.
or you're just like, for the youth, you're not doing what our expectations are,
Mm-hmm.
or while you're here, you're not doing the rules, you're not, kind of thing. It's hard because you want them to still be there,
Yeah.
but if they're being disruptive and causing someone else to not hear what God has for them,
Yep.
then they have to go. And at the same time, like, whereas I am deemed the mean one, I'm also deemed the favorite.
Oh, good.
So I'm not hateful.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's mean. I am strict and I, follow through with everything that I say. If I say that I'm going to come have lunch with you, I'm going to come have lunch with you. If I say, if you mess up one more time, you're going home, and you mess up one more time, you're going home. So a lot of our youth today don't have consistency. They don't have
Mm-hmm.
consistent teachers. They don't have consistent parents
Mm-hmm.
or whoever they're living with. And for me, that's a lot of our kids just don't have the consistency. And being able to be that for them
Mm-hmm.
and still telling them, like, I don't want to send you home, but these are, you know,
Yeah.
you're like, you chose to do this, and
Mm-hmm.
I am now following through, and you know that. So, and a lot of our kids have also come to the point of like apologizing quicker, like coming back and being like, I'm so sorry, I was a mess last week. Because we, like, for us, we tell them, if you get sent home, we, like, the other leaders, like, we'll all get together and we'll discuss like what it is that they did. So like if they got into a fight, like a physical fight or whatever, like we will talk about what it is that they did and then decide, okay, do they get to come back next week?
Mm-hmm.
Do they just need another week to like chill out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or do they need another week to realize that this really was not okay and you need to have just a longer discipline
Right.
kind of thing?
Yeah.
And then I will go talk to them. I won't go by myself. I'll take like my dad or, you know, someone else with me to go talk to them. And we'll talk to the parents too and say, look, this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, they cannot come next week, or they can't come for 2 weeks, like whatever it is that it needs to be. And I've come to find that because I have been consistent, the kids are more willing to accept the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
There's that. I would say just consistency is a big thing now in ministry, and find like knowing your Bible.
That makes sense.
Because God is an unchanging God, and if he has given us, no, this is what truth is, then we also have to follow that, and not to make your own up.
That makes sense. Well,
don't do that.
I thank you for coming on and sharing with us today. We've had a great conversation. My friends, if you will go to studentministryconversations.org, you will find all kinds of show notes, all kinds of blog articles, past episodes. If you have something that you would like to talk to us about, we need more people to come on. Let's talk, y'all. And so comment or email us, all those kinds of things. And we hope that you have a great week. We'll talk to you later. Thanks.